Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Youthman. In today's video, we're going to be uninstalling my crossovers in my 1980 Klipsch LaScalas speakers. The capacitors in them are kind of varying between each speaker. One speaker was definitely measuring quite a bit differently than the other two speakers. So it's about time to recap those, put new capacitors in. I made a previous video on where I purchased the capacitors. Klipsch has partnered with JEM Performance Audio, and so these basically are Klipsch approved. We'll get them back as close to factory spec as we can because they no longer make capacitors from 40 years ago. So I'll be uninstalling, I'll document the process. So if you've got some Klipsch LaScalas or really any of the Klipsch Heritage speakers, it should be pretty similar in that. And then we're going to take these over to my friend's house. We'll get the new crossovers soldered. I'm not the guy to do the soldering. I'll be filming, so Bob will handle all the soldering. And but we'll document the process just so that you can know how to do that in case you want to upgrade your crossovers. Now, before I remove the crossovers, there's two things I'm going to do, but I won't really show them in this video. I'm just telling you in advance. I'm going to take some measurements of each speaker in REW so that I can kind of see the before, and then once I get the crossovers installed, get the speakers back in place, I'll take another measurement of the left center and the right speaker and just kind of see how the old crossovers compare to the new crossovers. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some masking tape down on the carpet on my platform where my speakers are so that I can make sure to get them in the exact same location as they were previously. That way when I'm comparing the measurements, for the most part it's going to be pretty close. It won't be 100% accurate, but there's just simply no way to leave the speakers exactly where they're at and get those crossovers removed. So let's get the crossovers uninstalled and we'll head over to my friend Bob's. All right, guys, here's the good news. I did not have to rotate my crossovers around to remove them. There were two simple screws, one right here, so they were up near the front. So I just reached over the back end, disconnected the, the tweeter, the squawker, and then the woofer, and then the input. And so all of those were easily accessible. But man, you can see these things are ancient. So that's the big capacitors that we're going to be replacing. 1, 2, 3. Same thing on this one. You can see this has got like some rust here. So that is what a 40-year-old crossover looks like. So I think it's safe to say some new capacitors probably is going to be a good thing. So let's get these loaded up, head over to Bob's. Let's start working on these things. All right, guys, so I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what we've got here. So we're replacing the large capacitor and these two small capacitors. There's two screws here that hold this one on. There's two screws here that hold this one on, and then two screws here. So pretty simple to remove. The one thing that we want to make sure that we do is do only one of these at a time. That way you don't have to figure out what wires go where. But here we've got a black, and let's grab one of these. So what we'll do is we're going to cut these, re-strip them, and then this one here is going to get connected to that red and that black on this side. On this other side, just the red. Then we're going to take a second one. We've got a red going to one side, two reds going to the other side, and then I think there's just one red and one red when you remove this big one. So honestly, it's pretty straightforward, but we've got two small ones and one big one. All right, so here is a look at the new one. So you can see this capacitor is this one here. That other small capacitor is this one. And then the large capacitor here is this one here. So we ended up, I forgot to mention, we ended up having to drill another hole right here into this wooden board because as you can see, this hole was way too far for this wire to reach and for that wire to reach, unless we ended up using, you know, new wire. But I figured let's just go ahead and keep it as original as possible. And so, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. These little white pieces here, so as you can see, they're underneath the capacitor. So you basically just use the existing screw, screw this into the wood, and then you can see there's little slots here. So that's where we route the cable tie there. So honestly, pretty straightforward. Neither one of us are professional soldering guys, but I think it looks pretty great. On this one, we decided to make these some right angles, just kind of tidied it up a little bit better than our first go around. We weren't real sure what to do with this because we had this extra length here, but we should be good to go. We got one more to go, then we'll head back to the house and we'll get these installed. All right, so one thing we found is this was pretty much a good place to drill a new hole for the screw, is in between this hole and this hole right here. As you can see, you can't use that existing hole because they'll butt up against each other. So all right, so here we are back at my home. We've got all 3 sets of capacitors installed on each one of the networks. And so I'm gonna show you each one. Now take it easy on us. Bob is not a professional solderer by any means, and I have 0 skills when it comes to soldering, which is why I solicited his help. But I wanted to show you this because we learned some things along the process. And so on this first network, you can see how this one here, probably we should have lined it up exactly in line with that. When we get to the second and the third one, we made that decision to do that. So if I were to do this one again, I probably would have drilled a hole right here, and that way it would be kind of more in line with that. It's just symmetrical. Most people will never see these crossovers, especially when you're listening to them, but it is something that I just wanted to mention. And then also you can see how we just kind of went straight off of this, you know, straight backwards and straight forward. You'll see in the second and the third one, we made a decision to make some 90-degree angles. So moving over to the second crossover, you can see we did move this one further up. So it's in line with these, just looks more aesthetically pleasing. And then the other kind of main change that we made was we started to make these 90-degree turns to kind of make it easier for that cables, you know, to kind of lay there. But then these ones on the back were straight out. And here's a look at the third and final crossover. So this one looks very similar to number 2. Again, we made this one in line with the other 2. And so like I said, overall looks good to me. So I'm gonna get these installed, crank these up, and let's see what they sound like. All right, so fortunately I did not have to remove these or spin them around. I was able to leave them exactly where they're at. It's a little awkward position, but literally there's 2 screws that hold this board to the inside of this speaker. On the back side it's completely open, so it makes it easy to get to. And then right here we've just got, you know, so we'll have 2 Phillips head screws holding that onto the speaker, and then I just have to add the input, the woofer, the squawker, and the tweeter connections here, and that's just with a flathead screwdriver. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this installed, and let's crank it up. So I spent about 30 minutes with the new capacitors, ran through a couple of my go-to demos like A Star Is Born, just some beautiful vocals there, love the piano music, and then the guitar music in a couple of those songs. Also went to one of my go-to movies, which was Ready Player One. Both of those sounded fantastic. To me, it seems like there's a little bit better dialogue, a little bit better clarity, but again, not a night and day difference. But then again, I went into this not even thinking that that's what it was going to be. My initial concern was one of my speakers was not measuring like the other 2. And so I have run some REW measurements, and now all 3 of those are running exact. They pretty much look identical to each other, and so I'm glad to have that issue resolved. Whether or not I can actually hear that or not, I don't know. But to me, I want all three, performing at their best, and I believe that these new capacitors will definitely allow them to do that. So if you have some older Klipsch Heritage speakers and you want to kind of give them a refresh and update those capacitors, definitely reach out to JEM Performance Audio. They've been great to work with. Jim's a super nice guy. Give him a call, shoot him an email, and he'll get back with you on some pricing. All right, guys, later this week, I will be doing a final review of the Monolith HTP1, so make sure you subscribe to the channel. And as always, you guys be blessed, and we'll catch you in the next video.